But anyway, I would like to introduce Stephen Towell. He is a member of our consumer rep committee. So we have a committee of about 8 people out in the community who come and help us with public facing information. They'll look at our clinical trial protocols and put them into easily readable ways for the public to understand what we're doing and how it works. And we've been running the committee now for about 5 years. Stephen's been on our committee for 2, which is absolutely fabulous. So please welcome Steve.
So yes, I am a survivor of mantle cell lymphoma. I've done a lot of fundraising with Lymphoma Australia. We'll talk about that in a little while. And I'm a consumer representative with the ALLG. No longer 10 foot tall and bulletproof. That will become clear in a little while. Before I start, I'm an aerospace engineer by trade. There's a lot of rumours about engineering having poor public speaking skills, and they're all true. So I apologise for that in advance. So, young Steve joined the Army at age 17 in 84, and I went off to Army Apprentice School. I learned a trade. I worked on Army aircraft in operational roles for about 8 years after that, until the age of 29, so after training. So there I am, young and anyway. Thank you. So 12 years into my Army career, I got selected to go to ADFA and do a degree in aerospace engineering, where I passed with honours. After uni, I was posted to Townsville. I was made 2IC of the maintenance cell for the Black Hawk helicopters that did all the Sydney Olympic security. So I was in the background there. Then in 2001, I did an operational tour of East Timor, where I earned my active service medal. I left the Army at the age of 38. For more than half of my life, I'd been in an environment where we were told we were 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and we believed it. I tried to continue that into my civilian life. I'm a bit of an adrenaline junkie, so I race motorcycles. That's me at Eastern Creek a few years ago. I've given it up since it's become way too expensive, but that's another story. I water ski, I rock climb, and at the age of 40 I took up snow skiing. So February 2010, I'm getting ready for my first overseas snow skiing trip off to Japan. I'd lost a bit of weight in the lead up to that trip, more than I sort of realised at the time. I was feeling fatigued. You know what blokes are like. We'd blow that off, say I was working too hard. Didn't go to the doctor when I should have. In hindsight, I was also having night sweats. I was bruising easily. All the classic lymphoma symptoms that I didn't know what lymphoma was. And I thought I was still 10 foot tall and bulletproof. But this is what I looked like. So that was about 3 weeks before diagnosis in Japan. On the last day of that trip, I had a pretty decent stack. You see in the TV those guys cartwheeling down big runs. Well, I did that. I beat myself up pretty good and stopped skiing, got on the plane and came home. Back home, bruising was going away. I had this pain in my stomach, would not go away. It was getting worse. I thought I'd done some damage in the crash, so I made an appointment with my GP. Never got there. Pain became so bad I ended up in the emergency room. Initially, they did a blood test. My white cell count was through the roof, and the pain was, my spleen was very enlarged. So initial diagnosis was CLL, but they did some more tests and found out it was mantle cell lymphoma. It was stage 4, and it was spread throughout my lymphatic system and bone marrow, which is a pretty scary thing. I had no idea what lymphoma was at the time. Donna wasn't here to ask. So I went to Dr. Google. Dr. Google said 3 to 5 years and it's incurable. That was pretty scary. So I went into the Nordic protocol. That was my first up. 6 months of hell. I struggled pretty badly through it. This is me in treatment. I'm about 4 months into the treatment there. 6 months into that, I achieved a remission, and we did a stem cell harvest in case of a future auto transplant. And I was in remission, so I went about my life. I was having monthly checkups, and in July 2011 I had a relapse. The relapse was detected. So I went straight back into chemo again. I was in my second round of chemo, and my haematologist came to me and said that it wasn't working, that my lymphoma was recovering between each round quicker than I could. Essentially, I was becoming resistant to the treatment. So he gave me some options. He basically said, we can try this other protocol. I can't recall the name of it. And he said I had a 20% chance of achieving another remission. And I asked him what the alternative was, and he basically, the answer was basically, we can make you comfortable. So obviously you take that shot. I had a long time in hospital, most of the second half of 2011, in and out. I lost about a third of my body weight, so I was, mid 90 kilos. I went down to 62 or 63 kilos or something. I was very, very gaunt. At the end of that, I achieved a remission and had the autologous transplant, and I got out of hospital just in time for Christmas in 2011. During September through December 2011, there's a 4-bed ward at the Mater in Newcastle. I spent a lot of time in that room. And there was a group of 4 of us that were sort of all there around about the same time. We became quite close. I'd gone to all their funerals by January. So that was hard. I stopped making friends with people in treatment for that reason. And that kind of sucks, because unless you've been there, you don't really know. So now I'm very active on a number of Facebook groups, the Lymphoma Down Under, and there's a US-based one called Mantle Cell Lymphoma Support. It's such a small group, so the US-based one is the only one around. By May 2012, I'm still having monthly checkups, and I got some good news at a checkup. They said they'd found a matching bone marrow donor for me on the international register. It took them just under 2.5 years to find that. And they recommended that given my resistance to treatment last time, that I should have that transplant now, because I probably wouldn't get a remission if I had another relapse. So I had the allogenic stem cell transplant Friday the 13th in July 2012. My donor was an anonymous 42-year-old male from Hamburg, Germany. That's all I know. I'd like to thank him, but I can't, and that's probably good, because where do you start that conversation? Anyway, I'm 52 years old now. It's 9 years since my original diagnosis. Whereas, if you had to believe Dr. Google, back then, I should have been dead at least 4 years ago. I'm 7 years in remission come July. Excuse me while I turn over. So, January this year, I returned from my 5th skiing trip to Japan. Did that black run again every morning just to say, screw you. This is me and my son. It's at Perisher, not Japan. We didn't take a lot of photos in Japan. We're very competitive on skis. He's 17. We'll get off a chairlift and say, here, go. And that's it. And it's not uncommon to hit 70 or 80 kilometres an hour on the GPS in my pocket, so we go pretty hard. I'm out to yearly checkups now with the haematology department and yearly with the bone marrow transplant team. They stagger them, so I'm getting a checkup every 6 months, and probably that'll go on for life. Now that I'm well, I try and give back what I can. I'm pretty active with Lymphoma Australia, as I said before. I've done the Lymphoma Operative Parliament bike ride 3 times, so I've ridden push bike from Canberra to Sydney 3 times. 100 kilometres a day on a bike is a big deal when you're a patient. First time I did it, I was only 14 months out of transplant. That was a big deal. I've raised a lot of money for Lymphoma Australia, got a little bit of exposure. Here's the bike ride team and somebody that we used to know. That was 3 days before he got the sack. I like supporting Lymphoma Australia. They're a great organisation. Nurses like Donna, the education they provide, which wasn't around when it wasn't as easy to find when I was first diagnosed. And the lobbying they do to get drugs onto the PBS is just really good work. I'm sure Lymphoma Australia will talk about the grant they've been recently given to get some more lymphoma nurses out there. That's just really good news. I'm also on the consumer rep panel for ALG. So getting clinical trials done is really important. That's how we get new treatments out there. People, I was lucky when I became resistant to treatment that they found me a donor. A lot of people aren't, and new treatments are needed, and the only way we get them out there is with trials. So that's why I like to work for these guys. I'm kind of done, so open to taking questions if anyone has any.
Anyone got any questions for Steve?
I'll be around.
Chat to him in the lunch break or whatever. Yeah. Thank you, Steve. That was great to hear your story.
Can I ask a question?
You sure
I'm
can.
Judith Trotman, one of the haematologists supporting Lymphoma in Australia. What do you do? How do you deal with it when you feel your doctor is perhaps not giving you enough information, or is maybe being a bit of soft paternalism for a female doctor, soft paternalism for a male, and maybe protecting you, you sense they're protecting you from the full story?
I never
How do you deal with that?
You ask questions, but doctors are busy people. They're not always available. I never felt.
What are your tips for grabbing hold of a busy doctor?
Yeah, that's not an easy one. I mean, at the Mater in Newcastle, they have a lymphoma coordinator who's great. Jackie's really good,
Yeah.
and she'll try and get you an appointment or get the information for you. But you've got to be persistent in asking questions. But my doctor was great. My haematologist was Anoop Enjeti. I'm sure you probably know him. Great guy. He was struggling to not be in tears himself when he gave me that news. It was it was tough. Good. He's a good guy. Yes.
How old were you when you had the stem cell transplant?
So it's 2012. I was born in '66. Quick maths. 40.
So you're young.
Yes.
So an older doesn't have that sort of good chance, do they?
It's a tough road. An allo stem cell transplant is a tough road.
When you went into it, did you realise that there's a large chance it won't work?
Yes, but it was less chance than what I had if I relapsed again. That was my train of thought. I'm an engineer. I think in numbers like that.
But they wouldn't even have given that to you if you had been, say, 75.
I don't know what the cut-off age is.
No,
Judith
we'll have
might
done
know.
it.
I believe it's
Jane, do you want to make
65-ish.
a comment about the issues that are related to age with allogeneic transplantation?
Well, I think we've got
The next
Nada.
presentation
Oh,
we'll be
Nada's
talking
gonna
about.
be talking about
Yeah,
that
we're
stuff.
talking about stem
Yeah,
cells.
okay. So, but yeah,
Perfect.
it's a tough road. I went in July. I was a month in the isolation ward at Westmead. I was 2 months where I wasn't allowed to be more than 10 minutes from Westmead emergency room. Then I was allowed to go home to Newcastle. It was probably October where I went back to work. My employer was great. They let me work as I tolerated it. I would start at 7 and go home by morning tea the first week. And I extended, my goal was to extend by an hour each week. So, I worked till 10 the first week, 11 the second week, until I got out to full days. So yeah, it's a tough road. And 14 months later, when I been doing a lot of training, I was still struggling for fitness, and I still struggle now. I'm not nowhere near as able to maintain fitness as I was prior, but I'm alive.
Do you take medication every day still?
No, nothing. Or not for my lymphoma anyway. I've got some cholesterol issues, but I'm a 50-year-old male who hasn't. Who hasn't? But yeah, no medication whatsoever.
I was about to say what.
And I didn't do any
side
maintenance
effects?
either.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't do any maintenance, which, don't know. They tell me I got off the cyclosporin a lot earlier than most people did as well.
Great match.
So yeah, I had a very good match. I've had no graft versus host complications whatsoever.
Great. I was about to ask as well what sort
Yeah,
of
no,
symptoms you've had.
none
since.
really, other than general fatigue and.
Yeah.
But I don't think that's exclusive to bone marrow transplant. That's just I'm getting old.
And through your transplant, did you? These days they're pushing exercise before and after and during and everything. Were you
I
put
didn't
any
do anything
conditioning?
during. That's probably not a good thing. I found it hard to stop wallowing in my own self-pity, for a want of a better word, and get off the couch. And then when I took up cycling, that's another story. I got conned into doing that ride the first time drunk at a party and and sort of had to do some training and just the well-being that I got out of physical fitness. I still try and do 100 k's a week on the push bike. Life gets in the way. I manage about 65 or 70, but
It's a pretty good effort
fitness
for anyone.
fitness is helping a lot with my recovery.
What about diet? Is that helped?
I love food. If I didn't do 160 k's a week on the push bike, I'd be the size of a house.
Do you have sugar in?
I got the world's worst sweet tooth.
Okay, so you still do it.
Yeah, I know I probably shouldn't, but yeah. There's black jelly beans in the jar out there. They're my favourite.
Keep those.
Yeah.
Steve, you mentioned social media, Facebook groups.
Yes.
You mentioned belong to one in Australia, not very active. And you
No, I'm reasonably active in that, but it's not specific to my subtype. It's just the lymphoma down under group.
Yeah,
Mantle cell's very, very rare.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like Waldenstrom's, yeah.
yeah. So, can you give us some more general comments of what your experience has been on what sort of issues come up and how do they grow?
You get a lot of people asking for advice, which clinical advice I tend to stay away from. I tell people to talk to their doctors, and if you don't like what they're saying, get a second opinion. But advice with side effects, mouth ulcers. A lot of people don't know you can buy adult Bonjela. That stuff's awesome. Stings like hell going on, but it's really good for the pain of mouth ulcers. Really good. And a lot of people don't know about that. That sort of thing. The American one, the Americans tend to go big in their religion. I'm not a religious person, but there's a lot of, praise to God sort of stuff in there. If that's what you need, that's good, but I'm not. There's a lot of that sort of advice. I find that I get more involved with than I try and avoid the clinical stuff because I'm an aerospace engineer. Any more? Yes?
Why is it so hard to get the matching donor?
Again, I'm an aerospace engineer. They say siblings are a 25% chance. Neither of my siblings matched. I believe it's a much higher grade of match required than for a blood transfusion. I'm going to rely on one of the medical people here to answer that one.
To explain it.
We'll be explaining next session.
It's probably,
Most
yeah.
Caucasians, about 70%, you'll find a donor. It's harder and harder if you have
I just wanted
races
to
lots
look
of
at the worldwide search and
Yeah.
only find one person. I think there'd be
Yeah.
heaps of people.
And it's also, people registering as well. There's not enough people registering
Yeah.
across the.
I believe there's
Australia.
financial incentives in Germany.
Yeah.
A lot of donors,
and
a lot of anonymous donors come from Germany.
Oh yeah, it's big Germany.
Mm. There's a big push, so it's definitely something we're doing in Australia. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you,
Cool.
Steve. That was awesome.
Feel free to, if you want to talk about anything on the side, I'll be around. I'm in the ALG meetings for a little while, but I'll be around at lunch and stuff.
Great. Thank you. That was awesome.